Welcome by Mindful Elevation. I hope everybody is doing excellent and that you had a good weekend. Today we're going to be talking about the topic trauma. What it is, what impact it has on your mental health, and some tips how we will be able to handle with it. Tonight, we're going to have Miss Miluska Hansen. She is a personal coach, and with her, we're going to be talking about the topic trauma. Welcome, Miluska. How are you doing?
Hi, Ramonda, and everybody watching. As Ramon already said, my name is Miluska Hansen, and thank you for having me here tonight.
Thank you. You're most welcome, and thank you for taking the time to spend it with us today. So let me start with for you to tell us a little bit about why you choose to become a personal coach and a little bit about what it is.
Okay. Well, as a personal coach, because I'm trying, whenever I speak English, it sounds very well in my head, but if I say anything that's not okay, that's not clear enough, just help me out.
Not a problem. You're going good.
Okay. Like I said, my name is Miluska Hansen. I'm a personal and career coach. So these are two aspects in which I coach, in which I help people to achieve and become achieve the right purpose that they would like to reach in their life, but also gain clarity on whatever it is that is withholding them from reaching that certain point. I have been into coaching for quite a while, informally, within my studies, because I've studied business administration with a major in human resource management and communication. And within the aspect of human resource management, we had to focus quite a lot on not only what the business wants, but also what's best for the people within the organization. And that really spiked my interest because I am a kind of a natural coach. So in my family and friend groups, I've always been the one they come towards for advice. And my way of giving advice has never been, well, you should do this and this and this. It has always been, okay, but why? And helping them to reach that point. And that was very naturally, because before I ever read about coaching or took a course about coaching in order to make it my my daily job. After my studies, or actually during my studies, the aspect of coaching. Oh, okay.
Yes.
During my studies, the aspect of coaching became more interesting, and then I started reading about it, reading a lot more about it, how I could structurally help people, not just whenever it is a friend or a friend of a friend who comes to me with, hey, can you help me gain clarity on a certain topic? And that is when I started actually doing coaching.
Okay, that is great. And you find that it's rewarding when you coach and you help people out with whatever challenge they have in life, right?
Yes, most definitely. Like, you started asking the question and I started smiling already, because that's the main thing I love about coaching. It's not just that I'm able to speak quite a while with everybody and give advice here and there. It's seeing that the person came with a problem, or they had a question mark somewhere, and that we were able to walk it through together, and seeing that they thrive afterwards. That's the thing that's most satisfying for me. So I love my job, but most of all, I love seeing the results of it coming back.
Yes, correct.
Mm-hmm.
And especially because the clients are the ones that working towards whatever they want as well, and it's not you telling them what they have to do, but they come up with whatever they would like to. So yes.
Yes, most definitely. Coaching is a very personalized trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
I am not within personal coaching or within career coaching. I'm not the one to tell you this is what you should do. I'm not an advisor. You're not paying me to give you advice, so clear cut and clear advice just to go and do something. I'm here to guide you along. I'm taking you through all the steps. I'm asking you maybe clarifying questions you wouldn't ask yourself at that right moment to get you there. And it's quite important also to say that I'm a coach. I'm not a therapist as well. So because we're going to be speaking afterwards on a topic that's quite deep, and I would really like to have that difference. As a coach, I guide you. A therapist, that's why a therapist also studies for at least 4 years in order to give you this all these advice and treatments. As a coach, I don't give treatment. I guide you. I take you along the steps, and one of these steps might be, okay, now it is time, or I advise, now it might be time for you to go and speak to a real therapist, to a real psychiatrist, a psychologist. So that's very important to have there, because yes, you can do, if you're not well prepared, if you are not taking the right steps. As a coach, if I try to do things that are not for me, things that should be done by a psychologist, I can do more wrong than I do right. And that's an aspect that's very, very important for everybody. If you're going to work on something, make sure you're using the right professional to help you along with that. Correct. And that's something I really, really, really stress on whenever I'm helping somebody. And I also tell you, listen, I'm not going further within this topic, within this subject, because this is not something you should be doing with a personal coach, with a career coach. This is more, like you say it in Dutch, diepgaand. Yeah. And correct. You should have other help for that. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
That is so true. So so when we're talking about the topic trauma, can you give us a little explanation what it is actually, and if you maybe even encounter clients in your practice where you had to handle with them?
Yes, trauma is actually caused by a overwhelming negative event, something that happens that's so overwhelming that it actually gives you, and I will simplify it quite a lot, give you fear of that exact thing. And being someone who has suffered a trauma can affect you in different aspects of life. So somebody who has experienced, for example, a domestic violence, or illnesses that scare you, that are so negative that they actually bring you out of emotional balance. That's when you have a trauma. I started deepening myself or gaining more information about trauma when I started seeing certain things within myself, certain ways I would react on certain things, and limitations that I had that I could not explain. And I went and that's why I stress a lot on professional help. I went and I looked for professional help, because in certain things, and I will be very open tonight, like relationships, I would self-sabotage it very badly, because for the reasons I did not know at that time. And I had like a big question mark, like, I'm a great catch. Why is it that I always end up in these kind of relationships? Because like it was like kind of vicious cycle, or like I always had a certain type of partner, and I always had the same result. So we went back and looked what it was, and it was actually caused by a childhood trauma that I had. So
Okay.
that's when I started reading more about traumas in order to understand myself, but
Mm-hmm.
also be able to help other people. And let me say this in front of, first and foremost, everybody has negative events happening to them.
Correct.
And someone might actually even experience the same event that I have experienced as a child, yet not have the same trauma that I have, because everybody is made differently. Like the same, there's a saying, the same water that boils, that softens a potato, hardens the egg.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also very essential. So with trauma, there's no cut through way of, okay, this is your trauma and this is the 3 pills you're going to take and these are the 3 exercises and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
um, so the depth of trauma made me go and research more about it.
Okay. Okay. That is good.
Did
So
I answer the question? Because I went and rambled along, but did I answer the question you
yes,
asked?
you kind of like started, but that's okay.
Okay.
Along the way, because it's like you said, because of how you are as a person, the character that you have, you might indeed be reacting different on a particular event and I might be reacting, and then by me it might be causing trauma, while by you it wouldn't. So how is there a way to kind of like recognize from before, like, okay, if I have these different characteristics, this might be put me more in, let me call it, jeopardy for a traumatic, for it to become a traumatic event for me? Or is it really depending on the event, what state I am at that time, how my state of mind is, how I'm feeling at that moment?
Well, it differs quite a lot. Like I said, there's no cut through method of treating it. There's no cut through method of getting it either.
Mm-hmm.
There are some very strong people who have had a prolonged exposure to a negative event that just appeared in their life. For example, an illness or something that changed their life in a matter of a second,
Mm-hmm.
or things like rape, or so there are a lot of things that can cause a trauma. So there is no way to say, well, if you're an empath, there's more chance for you to get a trauma. It all depends on the circumstances, because somebody who is very strong and has like a less day and something happens at that right moment, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe a lot of things happen, so you lose your job, your landlord asks you to evacuate, and suddenly you get the fear of being homeless or something like that, and that persists, that can also cause a trauma. So there's no thing you can pinpoint like this will cause a trauma in someone. No.
Mm-hmm. Okay, okay. And then when we're talking, actually, because a lot of people does be talking about post-traumatic disorder, and some of us does mix it up with trauma. So what is actually the difference between those two? Because a trauma is also something that creates after an event that happened, correct?
Yes, yes. I don't really specialize on post-traumatic stress disorders.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as I said, I think it's very, very important to, I think it's very, sorry. I think it's very, very important to, schoenmaker blijft bij je leest, they say in Dutch.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And
Stay by your
post-traumatic stress
profession.
disorder, yes. A post-traumatic stress disorder is a type of trauma, but it's caused by prolonged exposure to the same trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it gives you another set of symptoms that a regular trauma gives.
Mm-hmm.
Post-traumatic stress disorder is more consuming, I would like to use that word,
Mm-hmm.
than a regular trauma, because it happens most of the time after wars,
we were talking about, you were kind of like giving a brief description about what the difference is between post-traumatic disorder syndrome and the trauma. So you gave like a brief explanation about that. And then,
Yes, yes.
mhm,
Yes, and it's important to note that in a post-traumatic stress disorder, the person keeps on experiencing the traumatic event. So within their head, they're like, I want to say, locked on loop. So they, when they're sleeping, maybe they re-experience all the stress and everything from that event.
mhm,
While during a trauma affects you, and it affects the way you continue on. A
mhm.
PTSD like pauses your life and keeps it on replay, if I can make that distinction. Within a PTSD, you keep on experiencing the same event. If it was an earthquake, you might be lying in your bed and everything is okay and you're all safe and sound, and you feel everything shaking just like the way it shook on the evening or the day that you experienced the earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
Where you can have a trauma from an earthquake, which makes you afraid of everything and might even limit you from going to certain um, places or lands or wherever where earthquakes are more common. It might limit you within your life, but it's not like you continuously experience or replay that traumatic event in your head.
Okay.
Is it clear?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. Because some of them were saying that now they know the difference as well. So,
Okay.
can when we talk about the trauma, can we talk about the different types of trauma, or is it everything a possibility to become a trauma? If you understand what I'm saying.
Everything has a different effect on another person, but mainly, or a negative event, something that's extremely negative, can cause a trauma in a person. And there are, like if you said, there are certain types of traumas. There are acute traumas. There's something that happened one single time that traumatized you, and this might be a rape or a car accident or whatever single impactful thing of one big negative thing that happened that can traumatize you, can give you certain fears and certain ways that's locked up in. There is chronic trauma. I'm just checking up on my notes because I have my notes over here. So if you see chronic trauma, which is a result of repeated traumas like domestic abuse or child abuse or neglect as a child, whatever, that all can create chronic trauma. So that's not only based on one single event that shook you, that had such a negative impact on you, but this has been going along for months, years, a long period of time. And there is also complex trauma,
Mm-hmm.
which is a combination of several traumas
Mm-hmm.
that make it even harder to handle, because most of the times we don't treat a trauma, we treat symptoms of a trauma. Like I said, I had complications in relationships and I got angry quite a lot, that I didn't say yet, but just a small thing could make me so upset, and I would cry my eyes out because I dropped the milk.
Mm-hmm.
So very extreme reactions to small events. And if I was not if I was not in a panic mode, actually it would be okay. I would just clean the milk up. Oh, I would maybe be a bit little upset, but it was not the traumatic. So most of the times we treat symptoms. And in complex trauma, so when you have several traumas working together,
Mm-hmm.
it might sometimes appear to be this trauma, and you go and you treat those symptoms, and along the way you, oh, okay, there's another one, and oh, there's another one, because the deeper you go, the more layers you go through, the deeper
Mm-hmm.
you go, the more traumas you can find, actually. But those are the three types of traumas.
Okay.
What can cause a trauma is so diverse.
Mm-hmm.
It can be almost everything. And here comes to play what type of person you are,
Mm-hmm.
what
Okay.
type of how you've been raised, in what environment you are, what age you have. There
Mm-hmm.
are so many variables within this. Yes.
Oh, okay. So then that means that if when you go to a psychologist to help you with the trauma, like you said, you're thinking that it's one particular trauma, and then along the way you're figuring out that there's more. So then in a way there's you can't know, because I assuming that you locked away whatever traumatic event you had, so it's not something that you can know at that time one time. But then it means that you don't know from before if it's several traumas that you have to deal with and only one, or can you know that from before that you start with a psychologist, or from the first session that you start with a psychologist?
No, most of the time, like I said, we treat symptoms and not the trauma on itself. So whenever you, 9 out of 10 cases, I would actually want to say, I don't have the exact number scientifically, you go there for a symptom. You go
Mm-hmm.
there because I have anger issues. You go there because I can't, my brain is clouded, or I can't concentrate,
Mm-hmm.
or my emotions are a mess, or something like that. That's why you start going. And when you're
Mm-hmm.
there, you start treating that symptom at the first time, or that's the way it went with me. You
Mm-hmm.
start treating that symptom, but in the meantime, and that's why it's so important to use the right professional. Um, you can also start asking deeper questions, like
Mm-hmm.
why do you feel this way?
Yeah.
And most of the times you don't have an answer for the why you feel that way, because the why is so deep, so deeply
Mm-hmm.
buried, especially if it's like a if you have abandonment issues or
Mm-hmm.
childhood traumas. Most of the time
Mm-hmm.
the childhood traumas are the aspects that you see a lot of symptoms, but you it's so hard and difficult to reach the root cause of all these symptoms, which is the trauma. The
Mm-hmm.
traumatic event happened, and you grew, and
Mm-hmm.
you learned coping mechanisms. You
Mm-hmm.
learned ways to be able to manage these traumas.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, you can't manage all of them anymore, and you get a symptom or symptoms, and you
Mm-hmm.
start treating the symptom. And then you go back and you start looking at the coping mechanisms, and why did I develop this coping mechanism for this and this event? Why
Mm-hmm.
did I have to adapt in order to go there? And after going through all these layers, so trauma is like an onion. After going through all these layers, you get at the core, and then you get through the real trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But from the outside, you see the symptoms. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So then it means that um, if you only treat the symptom, so
Mm-hmm.
let's say if you are in a session and you only, let me say, standing on your point that you only want to treat the symptoms, and together with whoever is working with you, don't continue, like you said, peeling off the rest layer of the onion, you will not handle with the you will not deal with the trauma, so then that trauma stays there and it can continue occurring in a different type of symptoms, or the same symptoms will come back after a while, even though you
Uh,
kind of like got a little tools and skills how to deal with that symptom.
you start by dealing with a certain symptom,
Mm-hmm.
and then after a while, you think, okay, I'm cured, and I'm done, and I can continue on with my life
Mm-hmm.
because I've dealt with the trauma. Um, you might have, or you might, I personally experienced that you go through several phases when dealing with a trauma,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't even want to say, well, when curing a trauma because a trauma is a part of your life. And I read a quote actually that said, if you break a rib, if your rib in your rib, what's the rib? A bone in your rib cage is broken. Whenever you breathe, it hurts. Whenever you laugh, it hurts. And if you don't treat it well, it will attach itself in a wrong way. And then you start dealing with the symptoms that whenever you do something, it keeps on hurting, etc., etc. Then you go with a coach if it's not a deep-rooted trauma, or you go with a therapist and you break the bone again, and you feel all the feels again, and you attach it the right way, and it grows and it cures. But it's still a sensitive part of your body. That bone will never be as strong as the other bones in your body, or the other side of your rib cage, because that other side has not experienced a trauma. Or, now I use it in a rib cage or a leg. Whenever you go and you take an x-ray, you will see where it has been broken and attached again. So this will always remain a sensitive spot within your body. And a trauma, when you heal it, because you overcome certain things, you become aware of certain things, you create other ways of dealing with certain things. But a trauma will remain a sensitive part in your emotional being, in your way of dealing with things. So you start by treating one of the symptoms, and you say, okay, it's me against the world again, and I can do everything. But if you never go to the deep root, if you never break the bone again and reattach it, when you grow, when you experience new things in life, or maybe new phases in life, or maybe you changed a job or got a new coworker that triggered something else within you, you get another symptom. And that symptom might be related to the same old trauma that you thought you went through. But as you only went through one symptom and never did the work, the introspective work, because even working with a psychiatrist or with a coach, it's not the session matters a lot, but it's not the session that will change or that will bring the trauma to the surface. It's the homework they give you, the homework you get, to maybe journal or write down what triggers you every time, etc. That's what helps. So if you don't do the job for yourself as well, if you don't take responsibility of, okay, I have a trauma, and the trauma was not my responsibility, the trauma was not my fault, but I have the responsibility of start healing it right now, you will always keep on experiencing different symptoms until you get there.
Yeah. Okay. Just now when you were explaining, you were saying you said about the different phases of trauma. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that?
The different phases of a trauma?
Yes.
Are you talking, okay, so, okay, no, I did not understand the question.
No,
just
because
ask it.
yes, because you was when you was explaining, you said you went through different phases of the trauma.
Of healing my trauma.
Yes, sorry, of healing the trauma.
As I said, I will be very open today in this session, and I myself had complex traumas. The third aspect that I explained, which are several traumas within each other, fighting each other. And I say had very proudly, but I have. Certain of them I have coping skills for. I have learned how that they are my weak spots, and certain of them I'm still dealing with. And I think it's very important to say this, because at certain times you might feel like a failure whenever you thought you went through something already and it comes back again. And healing trauma sometimes actually, to my experience, might hurt as well, because you have to look at yourself in the mirror, and you're confronted with yourself each and every time. and the trauma was not your fault. You did not cause the trauma, but you're having to deal with it. So in my case, there were certain symptoms that I had, um, and I learned coping skills for them. I learned deep breathing, and I learned to have a list of things to do, etc., etc. Yesterday, I had a panic attack related to something that if I tell you right now, everybody will be like, okay, Miluska. But at that moment, my trigger was out there and it got triggered. I exposed that trigger by not continuously taking care of myself in the way that I should have.
Yeah.
And I'm not blaming myself for this right now. But there are a lot of changes around the world right now with the COVID situation, for example.
Right.
And that makes us work from home. That triggers a lot of that brings loneliness. And within me, loneliness triggers my abandonment issues. One of the traumas I have a trauma of being abandoned, and I will not go within how that became that way, but I have it's a trauma, it's an issue, it's something I have to work on.
Yeah.
And it was also the same thing that affected my relationships, the same thing that affected that gave me angry outbursts whenever somebody would cancel a meeting, a simple meeting, because something happened, because they got a flat tire, or because their car wouldn't start, or something like that. So I thought I was over that. I had been dealing with it for quite a while, and I was okay with it. Whenever it would come a little to the surface, I would do my breathing exercises, I would meditate or journal, or I would go out and hang out with somebody else, and I would calm myself in that, because it still is my sensitive spot. It's still my sensitive shoulder that popped out once and that can now pop out again. But then COVID came, and it was not that easy for me to say, hey, you want to go to the restaurant tonight, and are we going to have a party tonight, or are we going to do something else tonight? And that brought up something new. So new circumstances can also trigger old traumas. So there are so many different involves. Who can help me out with the word?
Point of reference.
Point of
Reference.
references. Thank you. For a trauma. So and that's also all those references that you have to check in for the healing of that trauma, and things that can still trigger an old trauma that you might have thought you have dealt with already. Now, the way I say it, it's like I don't want to take away the fact that you can live very well with a trauma, because I said it like this, and some people might be saying, oh my God, I will never get over this. And no, because after dealing with something, after doing the deep work, and after knowing, okay, this is, I can pinpoint it, this is it. It takes like a whole weight off your shoulder to continue on with life in a different way. It's just like you had some glasses, and after 2 years, the same glasses that helped you 2 years ago don't help you anymore, and you have to go and readjust. That's the same thing like that. So you can live very well with healed traumas.
Okay. But from what I'm hearing, it's not a process that happened from one day to the next. It's a process that you have to keep on working on it, and then making the tools that you're getting, make it your own in a way, as in keep on putting them in.
Working on them.
Yes.
I might wanna compare it, and this is not just trauma, but mental health is quite a taboo within, especially Black people, our community. It is seen like a weakness. I'm very open about speaking of the fact that I visit a psychiatrist. I'm very open in that. Not just here. I if anybody comes with something, okay, that might be something for a psychiatrist. And the eyes widen and they're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, but I'm not crazy. And I said,
Correct.
do you think I am crazy? No, you're very well grounded, and they see all your achievements from the outside. Like you have your house, you have your car, you have your job, you have a company. You're not crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I said, but why should you think that you are crazy if I tell you to go to a psychiatrist? I visit a psychiatrist. I have my psychiatrist on speed dial.
Mm-hmm.
And they look at me like, okay, and I try to normalize it, but it's still a very big taboo. So whenever we talk about mental health, we try to cover it up. Okay, you have your mental health issues. Maybe it's not. You shouldn't talk about it at your work, because people will.
Look at you like you're
People won't
crazy.
trust you anymore, or
Yes,
people will.
exactly.
Yes, and when you are diagnosed with diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
nobody will say, well, maybe you should eat your chocolate and deal with it at home. They tell you, no, 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 don't eat the chocolate, respect your body. You have to make sure that your sugar levels, your insulin levels, everything. Okay, I'm not an expert on diabetes, you have
Uh-huh.
already heard, but you have to make sure that everything is okay. So
Correct.
why do we tell people who have mental health issues, deal with this at home?
Mm-hmm.
So eat your chocolate and deal with your sugar levels and your insulin levels at home. We don't do that to people with mental health issues, with physical illnesses. So why should we do it with people with mental health issues?
Correct.
And this is for trauma. This is for depression. This is for everything. We
Correct.
have to be more open and clear, and we have to be more open and willing to deal with these aspects
Exactly.
and try to normalize them in order to make it easier for somebody to open up about these issues.
Mm-hmm.
For somebody to, because that's also a big part of the trauma, and that's a trauma on itself. Because, and I'm a Christian, so
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want anybody to take it on take me verkeerd opnemen.
Yeah.
But
Take it in a bad way.
Yeah.
take it in
No
a
one,
bad way.
no
Thank you
one to
very much.
judge you.
Nobody to judge me.
Mm-hmm.
But telling somebody who tells you, I feel depressed, telling them only to go to church and pray about it
Mm-hmm.
is not helping. I believe in Jesus, and I believe that he has guided me through healing these traumas.
Mm-hmm.
He is a cornerstone, and one of the things I use in order to remain balanced is reading my Bible, is going to church, is praising. So I think it's a very big aspect, but I also believe that he has given certain people certain abilities, like a psychiatrist, like a life coach, like a psychologist, whatever, to help me in
Yes.
other ways.
I think you
And
need to repeat that. You need to say that again, because it's like you said, a lot of people just think that when it comes to psychiatrist, psychologist, life coach, it's only when you're crazy. People look at you weird when you see you looking for help by one of them. So I think you need to repeat that again.
well, I won't be able to repeat it in the same exact
That's
words,
okay.
but I believe in balance. Let me say it like that. I believe in balance. And I do believe that church can help. I do believe that praying can help. But I also believe that there are certain specialists, certain professionals who have taken their time, who have studied certain topics, and who are there to help you along the way, and
Correct.
asking for help, looking for help in a situation, or preventive,
Preventative.
preventative, yes, in advance, can really make life a lot easier and a lot lighter and a lot more fun to
Correct.
deal with.
Correct.
Life can be complicated enough on itself. And why shouldn't we use the tools that we have in life in order to advance life? Like, we all use agendas. We all use agendas. And I can tell you right now, well, you can use your brain in order to remember everything, because your brain is built for that, this and this and that. But it's a tool to help you along. It's a tool to help you organize life a little better. It's proven that when you write something down, so physically write something down, you remember it a lot better. So your brain is one thing, and I want to, yes, your brain is one thing, but you have a lot of tools to help your brain. In this case, your health is something, and there are a lot of tools that can help you with your mental health. And external help is one of those. Meditating is one of those. Praying and going to church is one of those tools. And a toolbox never only consists of a hammer, because then it's a hammer in a box. A toolbox is a toolbox. It has a lot of tools that makes you able to face different situations. Because if I go to fix a faucet, I don't use my hammer. I use another tool.
Yeah.
But when I want to put a frame on a wall, I use my hammer. So that's it. That I always use my weird comparisons, but I hope it makes it more clear for those who are looking and listening today.
I have a question from Elton. He was asking, when trauma pops up, what are the key actions that help you?
That help me personally, and that I also share with those that I coach. First and foremost is breathing. Because one of the first things that happen when you are faced with the symptom of a trauma is that your breath cuts off and you go into fight or flight mode. You go into, okay, I have to escape this in one way or another, and you stop breathing. That means less oxygen gets into your brain, and you stop thinking rationally. And that's the thing, especially in panic disorders, because certain traumas can cause panic disorders where somebody closes up. They don't see. It's like when you have a horse and you put the bozal, they say in Papiamento, the on, and they can only see what's right in front of them, but they can't assess the whole situation anymore. So when you stop breathing, that's essentially what happens. It's micro-focusing on the problem without being able to look further towards the solution. So the first thing I say is breathe. And sometimes you need help with that. There are apps that help you, that show you, okay, now you're breathing in, now you're breathing out. The first thing you have to do is calm yourself. And 5 out of 10 times, just calm yourself, just taking one step back, not reacting at that exact moment, but just breathing and just, okay, what's really happening? Just asking yourself that question out loud or writing it down on paper. I like to write. I love to journal. So I have my journal within my handbag because something can happen at work as well. And I breathe and I just write down, okay, right now I feel threatened because of this and this and this. And then write it down and it becomes simple. And then you can say, okay, but this aspect can be solved in so many ways. And then I might write some solutions. And it sounds so simple. And for somebody who is still in the mode, it can be like, okay, that won't work for me ever again. But just the fact that you took your breaths, you took a step back, you told yourself essentially, I'm not in danger.
Okay. Elton
that helps me.
Okay, that's good. I'm coming back to that. Elton is saying, amen. It's in the Bible that you should have faith and also go to the ones that have the gift of healing. So, yeah.
Amen. There's nothing more to add to that. Yes.
When you're saying about the breathing, I agree with you totally about the breathing. But can you give us or can you demonstrate to us when, let's say, I'm having a panic attack now? Can you show me how I will have to breathe or use my breathing at that time. Because if I can imagine it, if you're telling me you need to breathe, but then I'm going to say, yeah, but I'm breathing.
You might even hyperventilate yourself. Exactly.
Exactly.
That's a very good point. It's deep breaths through your nose and taking them out from your mouth. So, and it's a hard, yeah, like you're pushing everything out, and you might even use it as mental exercise. So close your eyes and take a deep breath, and then, okay, and now push everything out, all of the fears out, and make a sound when you do it. And it might be weird when you're sitting at the office with all of your colleagues beside you, so you might have to go to the bathroom to do this, but it's a deep breath through your nose. You fill this space up, you fill your belly up with air, and you push it out. And you do it for the amount of times it's necessary for you. I say at least 5 times, at least 5 big breaths, but you might need 10. You might have done 5 and still feel the anxiety, still feel the fear, still have that reaction. And it's essential to say that this is something you do when you're conscious about a trigger or a symptom. There are also symptoms that you don't recognize at the same moment. And you don't recognize it, so you act and react at that right moment. And after a while, you sit and you ask yourself, but why? The breathing method is for that exact moment when you recognize something. But it's also dealing with a trauma is also okay. Analyzing a day, that's why the journaling habit, I stress a lot about it, because when you journal, you give your mind the space to analyze certain things, and not over analyze, because it's something else, but just to get some things out. It's essentially like asking your child when you go and pick them up from school, how was school today and what did you learn? And the first thing they say is, okay, it was okay, it was nice. What did you learn? Nothing. And then you ask the question for 4 or 5 times. You really didn't learn anything today? You went to school and the teacher didn't teach you anything new today? Yeah, well, we did some math. Oh, and how was math? Yeah, well, okay. Was there anything that you did not understand? And then it comes, and it's essentially doing the same to yourself. It's reparenting yourself in a certain way. How was your day today, Miluska? Was there anything new? Was there anything you felt confronted with? Was there anything you would like to focus on for tomorrow? What was something that triggered you? Is this a new trigger? How are you going to deal with it? And it might be weird to ask yourself these questions, and at a certain moment it will just flow. It's not a Dear Diary moment, but it's just you're writing down and you're clearing your head. You can do this in the evening, or you can do it's called morning pages. So when you first wake up, you commit to filling a page of thoughts. And you just ramble on, just like speaking. It's just writing, and it really clears your head, and it exposes certain things that you're dealing with. So there are a lot of, because Elton asked the questions, how do you deal with a certain moment? There are a lot of ways to dealing with it. In a stressful moment right then and there, and if it's a panicking moment, breathing, the first thing. But if it's after the fact, or if it's something you really want to work on, I would really, really, really recommend journaling.
Correct.
Yes. Buy a specific journal that you like, that you feel okay carrying around, or that you would like to have beside your bed whenever it's okay for you to journal. And morning pages is committing to 1 whole page a day. You can also journal 4 sentences. And along the way, exercise the writing muscle, that muscle that helps you along the way. Yes.
Yeah, correct. Because actually journaling have been existing for ages, and especially when I think as young girls, most of the time you would get those diary books where they tell you you can write down your thoughts or you can write down a poem that come up in you. So in a way, journaling has been there for ages, but then I think it's when we grow up, we get so bogged up with
Busy.
everything in life that we forget that if something is bogging our mind, we can just write down how we feeling, what happened, what we did. Maybe we can even write how we want to do it differently, to just like you said, take it out of you and not leave it there in your mind, and all
Yes.
kind of other
Yes.
thoughts coming to way to make it worse than it might be. So
Hmm.
yeah,
we
that's
have we have been taught, or we are living in this type of rat race, and this rat race makes life more stressful,
mhm.
and stress also triggers old traumas.
Yeah.
So we're actually putting ourselves in a situation that is not healthy
Mm-hmm.
to heal and to find balance in order to keep on strengthening the soft spots I was just talking about.
Yeah.
So we have to be very intentional about our quiet moments. We have to be very intentional about our self care,
Yeah.
very intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not something that is taught in schools. This is not something that is normalized. We
Mm-hmm.
have normalized working very hard, because if you don't work hard, you're lazy. We
Yeah.
have normalized
Yeah.
that so much that we have um, made stress
Mm-hmm.
something to look up to.
Yeah.
Like, okay, she is so busy every day. She's such a hard worker, and she might be damaging her whole body, her whole everything. You
Correct.
have to be very intentional, and that's also a thing that I give to all my coaching clients. How do you give yourself um, time to unwind after a long day? And how do you recompensate yourself after a hard period of time of work, after a whole month of working on a large project? How do you how do you unwind, and
Mm-hmm.
how do you allow yourself to come back to the basics and unstress and have me time
Correct.
in order to be more balanced? Because a balanced life is the best foundation. We were talking about traumas, and we are still talking about traumas, but a balanced life gives you the right tools. Again, it's also one of the things that help you manage the symptoms of your trauma
Yeah.
as
Mm-hmm.
well as
Correct.
well.
That's true. I have a other question from Elton. What are the actions that someone can take if they come across someone that is experiencing panic attack? For example, we meet you on the street or in the office and you're going through a panic attack. What are the actions that we can take to help you?
Okay. Everybody's panic attacks are different, but the first thing I would do, and I do believe that there are other ways. So this is not that my way or the highway, but it is to try and tranquilize the person standing in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I will do this again by telling them to take a deep breath, one deep breath. Because sometimes if you tell them, okay, let's start breathing exercises, at that right moment, they won't be able to grasp to do that, because
Mm-hmm.
they're so deep within the crisis. They might be stuck at that step. Their mind is not thinking rationally, so they are also not breathing. Their mind could forget how to breathe regularly. So the first thing, I try to get eye contact and ask them one deep breath. Just one, just one, just one, just one, until they take that one deep breath. And that one deep breath creates a pause. It's a, okay, now blow it out very hard, very hard. Okay, the first one. And then you guide them along as more as you can. And it's like going on their level when you're speaking to a toddler. And I really like to compare a panic attack to that moment, because it's just a primitive mind that's working at that moment. I have to escape this problem. I have to escape this issue. I am in crisis. I have a problem. You go down to where the person is. You go and you look for their eyes, and their eyes might not keep following you, so you have to keep following them. So it's at that moment you it's give and take. You give, you look for them, and you get them to breathe in order to tranquilize. And from that on, you can continue asking maybe what the problem is, because I can help you get through a crisis moment, a crisis period, but I can't help you. I might not be able to help you resolve the problem that got you there. Mm-hmm. And that is also very important. I can help you just rationalize again, come back within being okay again. And you are the one experiencing the problem is the one who is responsible of dealing with the problem further on. And that might be looking for help of somebody else who is able to solve that problem.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's also true in coaching. I might be the one to help you see that something needs work, mm-hmm. but as I'm not specialized in everything, that's why I can coach everybody, but I cannot guide everybody. I can coach you towards seeing what it is in your life that needs, in your life or in your career, that needs attention. Mm-hmm. And I might refer you to somebody else who can help you with that as well. Yeah. So I think it's the same with someone who has panic attacks or whatever. Mm-hmm. I can help you get through that panic attack. Mm-hmm. And I might be the one to guide you along after that, but I also might be referring you to somebody else to treat the root of the cause.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Do children react different on traumatic events than adults?
Yes. Yes. Short answer, yes. Long answer is the brain of children are a lot more moldable than adult brains. Okay. Adult brains have found their way. They have certain brain paths, so it's harder to get something through. Children, when a trauma is detected earlier in children, it might be easier to get to work through the trauma, and they might even grow up and have little to no effects from that trauma if it is detected and treated early enough.
Okay.
That often is not done, and those childhood traumas continue on with us until we are adults, and we start showing symptoms of those traumas very late. And it's just like I like to make things, I like to express them in another way. It's like an infection. Mm-hmm. If you treat an infection when it starts, it's just oppervlakkig, it's just on the surface. Mm-hmm. And if you wait on for years and the infection keeps on going, you might need antibiotica, you need internal and external things. You might have to cut a piece of the flesh out. You need a lot more in order to deal with the same trauma the longer it persists. Yeah. But yes, children and adults react differently to certain things. Mm-hmm. Maybe they are not, because you develop certain skills along the way. Correct. And as a child, you might not be able to express yourself in the right way. So, that child is very noisy, or not noisy,
annoying,
or he or she reacts in such a way, and they might start to criticize the child, or they change, they weren't like this, and it's character, it's puberty, it's this, it's that. So we often misdiagnose trauma in children because we are not really listening and looking at what's happening, or maybe not asking the right questions to our children.
Okay.
I had a sister, for example, she died at the age of 30, and she left a daughter, my niece, with 6 years old. And the first thing they said after was that she had a lot of belly aches. She has so many problems with her colon and this, and her stomach. She has stomach ulcers. She's 6. And I asked the person who took her to a psychologist, because I did not all symptoms were related to her intestines and her stomach. I did not think it was a physical illness that caused all of this, but I on a distance, it was very hard for me to guide her through or ask her these questions. And I asked them to do that, and they refused for a year and a half. And at a certain moment, these symptoms were so affecting her life so much. She was in so much pain constantly, and all the tests came back negative or normal. The doctor said everything is okay, and you take your paracetamol, and we will see what happens next.
Yeah.
And after a year and a half, she went to a child psychologist, and they saw that these symptoms, what she was, because a lot of times we expect them to be in behavior, but that these symptoms that she was having were related to the trauma of losing her mother at such a young age.
Yeah.
So children definitely react differently, and everybody actually reacts so differently to traumas. So that's why as parents or as whatever, we have to be so vigilant in order to, if you see certain changes in a friend or in your child, to ask about it and maybe look for some help about it. And I'm not telling us to become hypochondriacs, like we are not on total vigilant mode every moment, but you know your child, you know your niece or nephew, you know the people around you, and you see certain changes. And yes, certain changes are related to puberty because the hormone starts dancing around in your body, but certain changes don't have an explanation. And you might be sitting down with the child and sitting beside them, because I'm always talking about professional help, just sitting beside your child and asking them a question and being open for them to tell the very long story that children sometimes tell. It can help, and it can prevent your child of developing a trauma. It can just be a negative event that they had the chance to verwerk, to
work on.
Process.
Yeah.
To work on, yes. So because we speak a lot about adults healing childhood traumas, but we don't speak often enough about preventing childhood traumas in the children that we are raising right now.
Correct.
And I think we have a lot of more knowledge at this moment than my parents had in 1991 when they had me. So I think it's also the responsibility of us growing up to raise children with less and less and less childhood traumas than we had, because we are aware right now of the things. And I'm not at all judging or angry or whatever at my parents, for example, because of the traumas I have, because none of them were done on purpose. None of them were given to me where nothing was done on purpose. Nobody had the desire to raise somebody with anger issues and whatever other abandonment or anything. It's not like that. But as we know better, we should do better.
Yeah, correct. you was just saying just now that often we don't recognize in a child that he or she has been gone through a trauma, and you have to help them at that time. So if a child continue growing with a trauma or traumatic event that they went through, and they grow up, they become an adult, will it be more difficult to work on the trauma than if you would have worked on when they were younger?
Yes, yes, most definitely. Because like the onion I said, at the moment it happened, you are at the core and you're dealing with the core. You can get there very early. So maybe it's just one symptom. While growing, the child gets to, they experience certain things that don't go well, and they create coping mechanisms. And these coping mechanisms are not always healthy, are not always the way to go.
Yeah.
And it keeps layering and layering and layering. At a certain moment, we see one symptom that we would like to treat. And when we start treating them, then it's the story all over again, that you have to dive and dive and dive through to get to the root of the cause. Where if you deal with a traumatic event, at the moment it happens, it might not even become a trauma for the child. It might be a traumatic event, something that might cause a trauma, but because you dealt with it, because you unraveled it at that moment, you dealt with it, you gave it space, because we also push emotions away. We guided them through feeling this emotion, and this is okay. It's normal to feel sad because this happened, or it's normal to cry because this happened, and allowing the feeling to exist. And you got through it is a very is a direct way of dealing with it, and it prevents us from creating the trauma that we grow up with. Is that clear? Yes, a traumatic event doesn't have to create a trauma. Two people can go through the same traumatic event, and just one can have a trauma. So a traumatic event per se is not the creator. It's how we deal with it afterwards.
Okay, that's understandable. Okay, we have been talking about the trauma and what all it entails, and I wanted to ask you if maybe as a closing, if there's anything that maybe some tips or maybe some tools that you can give us besides the, for example, the journaling and the breathing, if there are more tips and tools that you can give us for if we might have going through a trauma or the complex trauma, how to handle with those.
In this, there are two things I would like to say. It's do not self-diagnose. Do not self-diagnose. Yes, you might, and this might contradict my second point. My second point is knowledge is power. And let me start with that one. Read. Download audiobooks if you don't like to read, but you like to listen. Look at YouTube. There are a lot of psychiatrists and professionals on there who also share points of view, who also give a lot of information about trauma, about mental health, about everything. But do not self-diagnose yourself, and do not label yourself with something that you do not have. It's good to know about that. It's good to journal about certain feelings. It's very good to create certain routines for yourself, routines that work for you and your way of living. But if you feel that there is something that you are that you're confronted with quite often, do not label yourself with a certain trauma because you've read like these symptoms. Oh, this looks a lot like neglect issues from your childhood, and I might have this and this and this. Just, I would recommend for the person to look for help. And this does not have to be a life coach or whatever. It can be through your physician that can refer you to have just a conversation with somebody, just a conversation with a therapist. It can be one time, it can be a trajectory, or it can be a preventive with a life coach as well, in order to just talk about certain things and get more insight in whatever it is you're dealing with.
Okay.
And in tools, like I said, journaling, breathing, routines are also very, very, very important. And having a list of things that help you is also important, because journaling is one of the things that helped me. But walking in nature is also a very, very great tool. Just walking in nature and smelling the trees and smelling the fresh air is also a very great tool. Now, I do not like to walk. So for me, it's less effective than for another person. So it might be nice to try things out. Do you like riding on a bicycle? Okay, right. Does that give you a clear mind? Do that whenever you need it. Does singing at the top of your lungs help you? It helps me. It does not help my neighbors because I can't sing, but I like to do it. Just check and see whatever it is that works for you, and have a list. It might be a physical list. It might be a list in your head. Have those things so you can reach them whenever you need them.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And is there maybe some, do you know of unhealthy ways how people have been handling or dealing with their traumas?
There are a lot of unhealthy ways. We can refer to the easy ones: alcoholism, use of drugs, use of sex to forget what they are dealing with, binge watching Netflix, and that's for me. There are a lot of things that people can do in order to forget whatever they're dealing with. It's tucking away emotions. I don't want to deal with this right now, so I will be using something else to cover it up. But it just creates another layer. It's just a coping mechanism that you acquire that might not be healthy for you, that might even worsen the trauma on the long run. So there are a lot of unhealthy ways to deal with it. That's why I just mentioned, have your list or your package of ways to deal with it. If you feel like, okay, I'm getting bad again, for example, it's not going okay again, let's go for a walk. Before you grab the beer or before you start day drinking, let's go for the walk, or let's call somebody, because we often try and do things by ourselves because people, we are independent and nobody should know of our personal life, etc., etc. Have a close friend, somebody you can trust that you can call and you can be open with and say, well, okay, this is affecting me right now, and would you like to go on a walk with me, or would you like to go and sit at the beach with me? Sometimes you just need somebody to be there and sit there and allow you to process those emotions. Do not tuck them away with quick pleasures, easy pleasures that take away the pain at that right moment, but do not help you heal or do not help you advance afterwards.
Okay. Thank you. Well, today at Mindful Elevation, we have been talking about trauma, what the different types of trauma are, the symptoms, the effects, but we also have been talking about what are the positive way or the triggers, not the triggers, the how you can handle with trauma, like the journaling, the breathing, the meditation. So we have been talking about the both sides of trauma, and that it's important that you'll seek for professional help if you need some coaching and help to handle with your trauma. Miluska, I would like to thank you very much for your willingness to come by us and talk about trauma, but also give your own personal input about what it was or is for you and how you have been handling with it. Is there anything you would want to say as a closing?
No, it's been a true pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me, and also the patience you had when we were arranging for the right day to have this session. I'm very thankful that I have been able to share this with you guys, and also for the questions you guys asked. And if there's something that I can give is let's normalize mental health. Let's be the ambassadors of, of that part. Let's normalize it, and let's help build and teach the children that we are raising, the children around us, that it's okay to seek for help.
Yes, that is so true. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for being present, for your input, for your questions. And I wish you a good and healthy rest of your day and for you to enjoy your weekend.